Hi, everyone. It's just past 4:30 here, well, not in Berlin, but in Budapest, where I'm based. So I think we'll start the webinar right now. This is actually, I think, the third webinar that we're running today. It's been a busy day, and especially with the COVID situation, we're running more and more of these sessions online, because obviously we can't meet all of you in person, which is a pity. Today's webinar is titled Beauty Behind Numbers, Guided Analytics, and How to Make the Most of an Analyst's Time. And we will have a total of 3 presenters, Karina Engel and Lucien Christian from Avon, and myself, Mihai Menzi from Knime. I just go by Menzi for the sake of simplicity. I'm part of the customer care group here at Knime, and I head up account management in Europe. And I'm also an avid Knime user, so I'll actually talk a little bit about that during the webinar today. And since this is really a webinar hosted by Avon, I would like to stop sharing now and hand over to Karina to introduce herself and this initiative, which she is working on at Avon.
Hi, and hi everyone. It's very nice to kind of see you. Thank you for making the time to join our webinar, and I hope it will be super useful for you and interesting. Myself, I don't work in analytics. I work in HR and internal comm, but I'm here because I was a girl with a good idea, hopefully. My role as a host is to introduce you in the context of why we are having the webinar and to launch you an invitation. In Avon, we started almost 4 years ago to get more and more interested in data and how we use it and how we use it wisely. And my colleague Lucien will tell you all about our journey and where we started and what we managed to do. But along with this progress that we did towards data science, maybe, we also found necessary to build capabilities of our colleagues in analytics and to support them in getting better and better. And in order to do that, we realized that we are very limited if we only want to do it with internal classical development and training. So the idea of beauty behind numbers was born, which is basically a community of practice that we want to create and to invite anyone who wants to learn about analytics and data science and how to play with numbers in such a format that we didn't find someplace else. So we were very, we looked around, and there aren't too many spaces where you can gather as an analyst and, I don't know, debate tools or methodologies, or just ask simple questions to someone who might give you an answer, maybe from a different country and so on. And basically, this is what Beauty Behind Numbers wants to create. This community of practice, this space where we can learn together, where we can share our resources, our experience, our questions, where we can mentor each other and so on across industries and organizations, so that we can all bring data analytics to the next level. We don't make it mandatory either to our own people, so it's really an open invitation. We are starting with a LinkedIn group because we found it's the simplest way to gather people. But again, the idea is to have a community that is community-led. And if we decide together that we should move on Discord or any other platforms, probably we will do it. But for now, and if you want to learn more, and if you want to be part of a community of analysts who are interested in challenging themselves even more, feel free to join. I will also leave you the link in the chat. I will remind it about it at the end, and again, feel free to check it out. This event is basically the first in the series that we want to create. It's the official launch of our Beauty Behind Numbers. And basically, you are the first ones. You can basically be the early adopters and the early joiners. So again, hope you have a useful evening, and we will spark your interest in discussing even further, even closer in this community. And without any further ado, I want to give the mic to Lucian, my colleague, to Metzi again, to start the content of the meeting and enjoy it. See you.
Thank you very much, Karina. So with that said, let me just switch back to sharing my screen again. Bear with me. There's always beautiful ways of messing that up. So actually, I do need to switch display settings again. Before we get started, I probably should have mentioned, right, that everybody's muted. If you have questions, there's a Q&A panel at the bottom, so feel free to post questions there. We've got 4 panelists in total besides myself, so we should be able to answer questions here as we go along. We can stop for short Q&A sessions after each of the presentations. If there's anything we can't answer today, we will answer in a follow-up email, as we will save the Q&A for later. But feel free to post your questions there. As you can see on the right-hand side, this is where you can type your questions in the Q&A section. I should have started with the agenda first, right? But Karina's already done the introduction. I will give a brief Knime intro focusing on the topics that we're talking about here today, right? So how to save analyst time and how to get to guided analytics. And then Lucian will present a use case from Avon, showing where they are in this journey of theirs. And I'll show some examples of where you can go to in terms of guided analytics afterwards. And then Karina will wrap up really briefly at the end, just so that we can lay the groundwork for future presentations in this series. So what I want to talk about today really is from a topic of how do we get from ad hoc analysis to guided analytics. And I'm going to use a lot of the examples that actually we've gone through ourselves at Knime, or I've gone through at Knime myself, because I think it's just simply more authentic if I give you real-life examples during my talk about how you move away from the ad hoc analysis into the sort of automated solutions that you can then provide. Just a couple of things that I wanted to highlight before talking. So we're going to focus on analysts and SMEs. So we're not necessarily focusing on this audience. This is more of a presentation for general practitioners rather than, deep hardcore data scientists. We're not going to cover hardcore machine learning examples, deep learning examples, of data science examples like that. We're going to broaden a little bit the concept of data science here and involve everything that's really, unfortunately, we're all faced with the fact how much data preparation we actually have to do before we're able to do data science. And the first steps are really in the journey are about collecting data and just starting to analyze. I wanted to bring an example, which I found really interesting and exemplary from my times in research IT, where we spent a bunch of time interviewing chemists, and we were asking them, right, highly trained PhD chemists, on what kind of analysis tools they could best use. And they told us that one of the most important techniques that they have is called stare and compare, right? They have so much expertise that wonderful 3-dimensional scatter plots with 6 dimensions, right? 3 dimensions and 6 additional attributes for size, color, and shape give them insights into the characteristics of the molecules or the drugs they're investigating. But really, they have so much insight that they can learn just from staring and comparing. And that analogy came to me very strongly because I think the first step, right, what we'll talk about is the analytics platform is really about just starting to collect data and starting to observe data, right? And I think it's the first step in the journey to realize that there's data out there, that there's data you can actually use. And first you need to collect it and somehow start to analyze it. And this is still not anything on the sexy spectrum of machine learning or data science. It's just those basic first steps. And then we'll talk about how that progresses further on. And obviously, I hope that in this series, and of course of all the other webinars that we present and our partners present with us, you'll see examples of real-life use cases of machine learning and more in-depth data science examples. I guess my premise is that most of you are familiar with Knime to some extent. So Knime is built on the visual workflow paradigm. We have nodes that perform tasks on data, and these we combine into workflows to process data. And then there's a nice feature about encapsulation of these pre-built steps that you can create components that you can reuse later on in your analysis. You can share with others and just simplify the reusability of things that you've already done once. If you look at Knime itself, there's thousands of nodes, but I don't want to highlight the thousands of nodes because that can be daunting. Most people, and especially analysts in the early steps with Knime, will end up using, maybe a dozen, a couple of dozen, maybe up to 100 nodes for all the pre-processing and data analysis that they will do. They're focused on data access, so accessing data from various sources, files, databases, and external APIs. There's transformation nodes for preparing your data and doing most of the analysis or data prep that you will be doing in the first steps. And there's analysis and data mining nodes that allow you to do everything from simple pivot tables to group bys to statistics, and then all the way to deep learning, which I don't think we'll definitely not touch on today. Maybe Lucien will touch a little bit around models, and I'll briefly reference them here and there too. And then once you've analyzed your data, the next step is obviously to want to try to visualize it, because that visual analysis is also part of the steps, right? So using histograms, scatter plots, bar charts, and so on and so forth to get insights into your data. And finally, you'll want to deploy the results either simply to create reports for yourself, or write it back into Excel files, or write it back to a database for further consumption downstream. And there's a nice extension of all of these functionalities into the big data world. And this is really what the individual user will be doing. We integrate a lot of different technologies because we really believe in offering the best of breed. So the access to data sources, some data sources, Lucien would definitely mention, the access to scripting, the access to reporting, which I think he'll also mention, because you can do visualization in Knime, but there are company standard BI and visualization tools. And then there's a wide range of AI, ML, and deep learning libraries that are available out of the box in Knime. And then obviously with cloud infrastructure become more and more important, extensibility in that direction too. But let's talk about what a data scientist really does, or let's step back and let's talk about what an analyst does. So I would never call myself a data scientist, but I'll tell you a little bit about the journey that I went through, and I think that exemplifies where you can go through. So when I started at Knime, I was one of the first sort of sales guys. Not that we are particularly the salesy type of customer care people, but we had a lot of data layering around, and the first step was to access whatever data was available in Excel files. And then slowly I started to realize what other data types are available for us, and I started to create, as being at Knime, what other tool you would use, started to use Knime to build simple workflows to start actually collecting data, just simply look at what's available out there and simply glean insights just by the fact that I access two data sources or two data sets from two data sources and joined them together and saw the magic appearing of relational data. And then obviously that started to sort of progress. Modeling and visualization, maybe it was just simple tables or simple group bys just to start to see more insight into, let's say, who our most active customers are, what are their needs, how can we best help, who's the most active on the forum, how do we reach out to them, how do we start fostering communities, and so on. And then that sort of segued into a situation where I created a workflow because I started to reuse it more and more. So I started to optimize it and capture the results for later usage. So the initial stuff was just ad hoc exploration, and I slowly started to create workflows which became standardized. And then, of course, the biggest stuff is these things became useful, and they became useful for others. So from the ad hoc sharing of these workflows, we suddenly got to a step where I had to validate these workflows and start to deploy them so they were consumable by others. And initially, they might have been just simple Excel files and PDFs, and boy, do we generate a lot of PDFs with Knime, because it's one of the simplest ways for us to generate a lot of insight into the data we collect, which, after all, we're a data science company, so we should be doing. And that validation and deployment automatically leads into people starting to consume and interact with the reports and results that you generate. And that's where the, the interesting part comes in. Just a moment, I need to mute myself to cough. And the interesting part comes in there, because as soon as people start to consume and interact, you realize that they're going to have input, and their input is going to be something that the first step is they run back to you and always ask you to modify your reports, to change something about them. But what you actually start to do is you realize that there's interaction points that you should be able to introduce to give them the ad hoc capabilities to change those reports. And once you've standardized this reporting data analysis scheme, you're obviously going to get continuous feedback. You're going to monitor the results and update those applications that you've developed for your colleagues. Now, this all talks about the big scheme of data science things, and we run into more and more discussions, right, with customers and prospects who are interested in Knime, and we always talk about models. But I think we have to extrapolate beyond models to everything that workflows do, because they're all data process steps that we do need to automate, and we do need to observe in the same sort of eternal cycle of continuous improvement. So with that said, right, stepping away from the ad hoc analysis, we go to first the automated, validated deployment, and then sort of the interactive applications. And that's where we extend the Knime ecosystem from the analytics platform to the commercial server tool, which allows us to deliver some of those functionalities. And to put this into a sort of journey prospect, so we start with, I would say, well, we've got a couple of interpretations of this slide, but my interpretation is that we start with custom data science, where, as I said, I would sit down, create my own little workflow, do some analysis. Then I'm creating the automation, which is a black box tool, right? This is something where the report runs and there are results, and that's it. And then the next step is guided analytics, where we create these interactive applications because I create a report, people use it, people realize that they want to be able to change things as they go. They don't want to come back to me every time. I don't have time to respond to all their requests. So we're going to introduce simple applications, which allows them to do simple business and analysis work, even if they're not Knime experts. And the whole concept behind this is to be able to offer the right level of complexity and to empower business users appropriately. So step one, right, we empower business users by providing the analytics platform and providing all the examples on the hub, descriptions, components, things that they can reuse, where we provide the workflow coach, which gives them suggestions, and lots and lots of materials online. And then we go further, right, into the automation step, when we've created those reports that we can now automate and deliver to our end users and colleagues, where you can export rich, complex Excels or create reports in BERT, and obviously integrate with all the other tools that people use to consume these results. And then finally, really what we're striving to get to, and I think where the journey, I don't say ends because it's a continuous journey, but where we strive to get to is to create these interactive applications where Knime expert sits down with the SME, the subject matter expert, and together they design an application that delivers the kind of insight and the kind of interactivity that's needed by the end user. And these are not just simple dashboards, right? They can be potentially, and I won't show really complex examples today, but there's the possibility to create rich interactive applications that don't just function as dashboards, but really follow that guided analytics step where you as a user can influence where to go next and make decisions based on the insights that you've gathered in a step-by-step fashion. So with that said, I'll hand over to Lucien, who will talk about where Avon started, and I guess where they're heading to and where they are right now. And I'll go get some water. Lucien, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I hope you hear me well. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay. Yeah, so I hope you see this. Hi, I'm just to get just to introduce myself. So I'm Lucian. I'm I'm an analyst for forever since. I went through several roles in analytics with retail banking, and then in Vodafone, and then in Avon. Um, it's been a very interesting journey for me to go through sales analytics, through customer experience analytics, and now uh, a lot more sales analytics and marketing. Um, yes, as Mehdi was saying, I'm not an I wouldn't consider myself as a data scientist either. I'm just a very curious person. I do like to play a lot with numbers. I'm also very passionate about thinking in processes, and this is what I preach to my team all the time, that everything is like a process, and you want to do it as well as possible, as fast as possible, to optimize it the most. So I'm going to talk about a bit about how Knime helped us over the last 4 years to evolve and to improve our reporting processes, especially, and how we managed to automate everything. I think probably like everyone who started doing analytics and reporting 12 or something like this years ago, like I did, we were all used to this lots of tools and concepts that we were working on in order to get our job done. So, for example, in our case in Avon, when we started, we were using databases like the Oracle database, where we have the production database. We took the data directly from there. We also had a database, a data warehouse, which replicated some of this data, but not all of it. And we used a lot of local data. So we had files, Access files, Excel files, that we would use then in our reporting specifically. And also in analytics, like dictionaries of, I don't know, products, dictionary for geographies and other information like this. We were using lots of tools for processing. So we're using Toad to extract data from Oracle. We also had MicroStrategy, which was sitting on top of Greenplum, where we also exported some data. And basically, we were exporting data from here, and then we're taking data and we're processing data and transforming data here in Excel and in Access, lots of things. And then here for reporting analytics, we did lots of, like you would know, lots of formulas. You would try to make an automated process in Access, but really we ended up with lots of formulas and VLOOKUPs and lots of manual input in Excel in order to send some reporting, which was back then only Excel. This, of course, as I mentioned, required a lot of manual input. To be honest, the process was so prone to error, but given the fabulous team I had, we didn't have so much errors. But I mean, I don't know, if you look at the Lean Six Sigma perspective on this, it was crazy. I mean, you could have had tons of errors with some major implications on it. And the biggest problem was that we had to allocate a lot of time and a lot of resources to just process the data, just get the data here. So I think that lots of our time was invested in extracting data, refreshing data in some database, and processing VLOOKUPs, doing all the things before sending the reports to the actual recipients. And the other problem was that working with all this information on our local environments, of course, meant that we were pretty limited in what we could do with the data in terms of modeling, in terms of analytics, because yeah, you were working with 2 gigabytes here in access, and then 1 million rows, which I think no one actually got to and had a working Excel file. But so we were very limited in what we could do. And probably, guys, you don't know very much about Avon, but we do sit on a mountain of data. Yeah, so as I was saying, we invested in order to automate and make the most of our time. We invested a lot in our infrastructure. So the first investment we've done was with Knime server, because we were already starting to work with Knime, and we were using the analytics platform. And we did manage to automate a lot of reporting processes. So we had reports that we required 4 hours of an analyst time to run them once. And the good thing about it is that the good thing about it was that after starting working with Knime and developing the workflow there, where we could extract the data, we could process the data, we could send the data to whoever we wanted to. The time, of course, decreased a lot, like half of it. But then the big plus came when we actually got the Knime server, where we could actually put everything into production, move everything from being processed on our laptops to them being automated and executed in a server environment where you had lots of other resources, of course, and you could do all this stuff without you actually being required to execute something or press a button or do whatever in order to get the report to the right persons. And the second thing we've done is invest in a data mart, which enabled us to move lots of the processing to the data mart, and also it sped up made all our process like a lot faster. So we have reports which required probably like 4 days in a month, if you summed all the effort you had to do, 4 days in a month for an analyst to run them. And now they take probably around 1 hour to update them every now and then when the offer changes. And then the report runs automatically every day. We used to be able to just send these reports like once per week. Now we can send them daily, and there's no effort to do it because you have everything in the production, and you have everything in the server environment where everything runs automatically, and just need to manage those processes in Knime. We also started working with Tableau, so to move as much as possible the reporting into Tableau and the visualization, and also to help democratize the access to data. Another cool thing about working in this environment now is that we could scale up everything that we are doing. So we started working with and doing reporting for 2 markets, and then we scaled up to 5 markets, and now we're scaling up to 10 markets, and it's pretty much just a bit of the code where you can just change the number of the markets, but reports being pretty similar, you don't have to change a lot of the data processing behind it. So probably just some cosmetics on top of it, like I don't know, column headers for a report, or some markups in Tableau. But like 90% of the data processing that we used to do, we don't do it anymore because everything is being optimized and automated in this environment. And this is a bit like a map of how our infrastructure is looking like right now. So we have all this data being poured out in Snowflake, and here in Snowflake, connected with Knime server, then we can do a lot of the automation and ETL, and then we use all this thing into all our reporting, visualization, and in data modeling more specifically. Why we use Knime is because we wanted a tool where we could do most of the journey, so we can very easily access all sorts of data. And I will show you how we connect in a bit. I will do like a live demo on one of the workflows, but you can virtually connect to basic like every sort of database. We connect to Oracle, we connect to Greenplum, we connect to Snowflake, and you can merge all this data into one environment, and you can do all the transformation. In the same environment, you can do data mining, analysis in the same environment, and also visualization. So for us, it was very helpful to have like one tool to work and have all the journey and have analytics being done there, reporting being done there, and everything done in one place. So we didn't have to learn like thousands of other applications to work with. And this is the example I want to share with you. So we had this report. I told you it took like 4 hours to do it before, when we were exporting all the data beforehand and then processing it. So we're starting some CSVs with Oracle, from Oracle, and then we moved everything in Excel. And here in Excel, lots of manual inputs, lots of VLOOKUPs and formulas, and everyone who ever done this probably has a story when they did a mistake and choose a wrong row, and then you send the entirely wrong report. And yeah, when you send this to hundreds of people in sales, it's not something that you want to happen. It's not a pleasant thing. And then we used macros to send all this information to the recipients. And this took a lot of time. This took a lot of time and lots of steps. Now these workflows, it's pretty simple. So all of our data is in Snowflake, and we have this workflow which is developed in Knime desktop analytics platform. And whenever the offer changes, as I told you, so for us, for example, every 3 weeks or 1 month, we go in there and we update the workflow with whatever changed from one offer to the other. And then this workflow is executed in server, is deployed to the server, and then the execution is orchestrated there in the server. So we just get a message whether we had some errors with the report being executed, but other than that, there's nothing we need to be doing about it anymore. And yes, the report is still sent in an Excel file to the recipients, but this is automated, so we don't have to export the file, we don't have to run VBAs anymore. Everything goes directly to the recipients, and we just have a nice report telling us how many of these emails are being sent. This is a closer look at how it looks like. I actually made this workflow look a bit nicer, so it's easier to understand the pieces that happen in the steps that happen in here. So we have this part where we define some variables. For example, what's the current offer, what market do we do the report for, and this is something that we developed ourselves. And then based on these variables that we're setting up in here, we actually set up like a couple of them, and based on them, there are some other a greater number of variables that are being created automatically. And then these variables are being fed to this process. So these variables are then being used in all this, and I will show you there are some small nodes, but inside these small nodes there are like tens of other nodes. And these nodes use these variables to automatically extract data. And we have like a part of the report which is static. So even if the offer changes, for example, I don't know, sales in the current campaign is still calculated the same way every campaign. So We might have some incentives. We might have some one-time incentives, and they have different mechanics. So we need different. We do need different different tracking for them, but we have a set of main KPIs which don't change long term. So we usually split all reports into these parts. We have like a core report data, and then the dynamic part where we just change the part whenever a new incentive or a new reporting is required. And then we merge this section in one place after that, and we have this other part where the sending this report to the sales happens actually. So in this node, you'll see that we actually do some steps, like we collect some other variables, for example, addresses, how the message is going to look like in terms of an email, how the files are going to look like in terms of naming, for example. And also inside here we have some Excel formatting, thanks to Continental, our friends, who developed some very interesting nodes for this. And we send, and after that it's just a send node which delivers this report to the right people. I'm going to switch to Knime just to give you like a live demo of how this happens. Okay, so I'm going to to stop this to refresh this one. So as I told you, these nodes here, so these are meta nodes. They actually contain lots of other nodes. They're just pieces of the entire process. We like to keep them in a way you can see a top line of the process, so you can see an overview of the process, but without having to scroll like 10 kilometers to the right. So in these variables, for example, we can set up the campaign. We can set up the country for which we do the report, the previous campaign, previous year base, where we're comparing. And inside this meta node, this is actually how it looks like. So we have all these inputs, which are strings, for example, in this case, and all these inputs are being then being fed to the report. So I'll have a number of inputs that are going to be used in several places. For example, in SQL queries, for example, in naming the file, I'm going to use some pieces of this information and put them together into a name, which is automated then. And this is the core part of the data. I told you it's a lot more nodes once you go deeper into it. And this is a connector we're using. This is actually another meta node, because we use this connection for everything that's automated, and we have a user with a password. So I wanted to all the workflows that use this gateway, right? If I change anything in the credentials, I don't want to then go into like all 100 reports we're doing and then change the credential in each and every connector. So we created this meta node which has some information about the credentials, and this is linked to in the server. So whenever I'm changing it in one place, that change actually goes to all the workflows that use the same meta node, and you can just deploy it without going through each and every one, and that was really cool. And then we have all these are pieces of queries which are then being joined together, and then I have this big query. It's going to be looking something like in just a second. So Okay, so all this is like a very big query being built up into something looking like this, which connects all the information I want from all the tables I want and puts them in one place, which then I retrieve to my laptop, and then we mix this information with some other information which is coming from other sources. And as I told you, we have the same kind of things happening for different other specific incentives, for example, where we have targets and then we have the actuals for those targets being mixed up. And then we merge all this information into one report. Okay, and here I'm going to send this to myself right now. And you can, in here, I developed we developed this component where you can just set up like who you are going to send it to, where is this file going to be sent, what's the file name going to look like, and then like an email, right? What's going to be the introduction, a paragraph, second paragraph, signature, and everything else. And inside, it's just another workflow which takes all the information, creates an individual Excel, and then sends it to that address. This is where, for example, I would send this to myself. But for example, I could be doing this to send it to all our zone managers, which are a lot more, and then I would have individual files created for each and every one of them, because I would be filtering them each and every one of them separately and sending them on an email with to their specific address with a specific zone that they are managing, so they can just see the report. And the report, as I told you, is being formatted because we can do that as well in Knime. Again, this doesn't require any input from us, because I pass along all the information about what's the period that I'm doing the reporting for, who am I doing this report, who am I sending this report to. So if I'm sending an email to zone number 1 for campaign number 14, I'm going to send an email with the Excel file that's going to be called, I don't know, a performance report, zone 1, campaign 14. So each of this information is used like a variable, and this is what we are trying to make everything as simple as possible, so that I change this information in one place, for example here, and changing this information here will cascade variables throughout the entire workflow, and the execution doesn't require any of my input. So this is basically the example I wanted to share with you.
Lucian, why you are still in this screen, because it's a very specific question, and I think it's good to take it now. So Elhoz asks, what is the difference between a meta node and the component? So maybe you can explain it while you're here.
Yeah, you can see meta nodes are like actually just a collection of nodes, right? So I use them to keep like this part of the process in one place. If I would show this in here, then I would have like this very big drawing table, and it's easier for me to navigate it like this. Meta nodes actually, components actually work as like a small app, right? This is how I use it as an analyst, right? Not as a data scientist. I know that Medzi can give you a lot more insight in how like more experienced data scientists use it, but we use it like this to have like this interface where you can just change the inputs, right? Because these inputs are already being set up and defined in here, and with this interface I'm just changing their values, and then based on that value, you can use the inputs value and the variable value throughout the entire process. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I would add just one comment to that. So yeah, the real difference is both meta nodes and components allow you to encapsulate functionality into a single node. Both can be shared on the server or with other users. And really the difference is exactly what Lucian highlighted, is that while meta nodes do not have an additional UI or interactivity option in them. Well, components do. They used to be called wrap meta nodes, which was just confusing, but components now,
yes,
they're interactive, right? So they can either be interactive here in the analytics platform, or they can be either interactive in the web portal, which I'll show you. So it's what you use to basically create interactivity into your applications. And there's two other questions which I think we can, which people wanted to ask. One of them was, how often do you have to change scheduled projects by some business requests, and how does it affect a data delivery chain?
Yes, so I think that the more we had, the faster we have access to data, and yeah, the more data we can actually access and process, the more requests you get, and that's a good thing. I mean, I'm really happy with that. But yeah, there's a complexity to that. So we have lots of, because we can deliver this. So back 4 days, 4 years ago, right? If someone would ask me, I don't know, update some things or something about this a mechanic in one of these incentives is changing, that would be like a major disruption for us. Right now, it's just a matter of just updating this workflow so that we add some information, we process some information differently, and once this is done, the deployment just runs on the latest version of this workflow. So I don't actually, I can show you. I will show you. Executing something like this is just, you schedule, you say when do you want this to happen. You can say you want it at fixed time. You can select days. You can select months. You can, so, and once I'm scheduling this, this is going to, that schedule is going to execute the latest version of the report I have deployed on the server. So if I'm changing anything, I don't need to go there and reschedule, because it will just execute and send the latest version of the updated version of the workflow.
I guess the question a little bit is here, how often do you have to change these?
Yeah, we do change them. So we have 3 week campaigns, and probably we operate changes, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 times during this period. And that's like, there's smaller changes, but like every 3 weeks, we basically redo this part. So this part has to be redone, because especially this part, because these incentives are actually like 3 weeks incentives. They change all the time, so we have to develop a new workflow for them. And if, for example, we have, now that we scaled up with two more markets, if we have different mechanics in the markets, then yeah, we have to have different workflows for them as well.
Okay, there's 2 other questions. One of them is, how many people worked for 4 years to make this reporting environment?
Yeah, we have a team of 6 analysts right now. And yeah, when we started, it was very much of an exploration exercise. So we didn't have time allocated to learning. The Knime is pretty easy, and I'm not going to brag, but I did have some experience with enterprise guide in SaaS previously. So having that sort of experience helped me to actually learn faster to work with Knime, because it's the same process-driven kind of work. So you just have a series of steps which are taking data, extracting data, processing data, so you get this information in a specific format that you then want to use. So I guess that learning Knime, learning to do something like this, to use the functionalities at Knime probably will take you, I don't know, 1 month. If you allocate like 100% of your time, it's like 1 month. I think what you start to learn in a longer term is actually how to improve and optimize them as much as you can, the process. I mean, and when I say process, is like how you sequence everything, and how everything is sequenced, and how you use the variables, and how you define the variables, and how you can automate everything so that you can just do one change in one place and then don't have to go to the entire process and do changes in, I don't know, all the queries, right? This is something that comes with working a lot. And as I would tell my team all the time, is like every time I'm doing something, I'm aware that if I'm going to do the same exercise, the same report, the same modeling, like 5 weeks from now, I'm surely going to do it differently, because the more you work with it, the more you learn how to do things even faster, even better. So it's just a matter of trusting the process and staying with it.
Okay. But then just so to kind of summarize that, I mean, you've got 6 people working as analysts, but they aren't all, like, they haven't spent the last 4 years building these workflows, so it's not like 24 years of work.
No, this workflow, yeah, this workflow is something that probably would take, I don't know, a couple of days to build. For one analyst. It's not
what actually takes the most amount of time?
Knowing where to get all the data from, and validating the data that what data you bring in, and then basically just again, I think that once you have the data, then it's just a matter of developing this workflow that puts all the data together in the most efficient way. And this is where you improve a lot over time. How you put the data together in the most efficient way. That's what's going to eat the most of our time right now. And then, yes, in here we do have changes, but again, I mean, mechanics are not like completely different from one campaign to the other, right? So let's say that even if they are, you probably did the same incentive with the same conditions and stuff like that a couple of months ago. So you already have like an idea. And another cool thing about it is that we actually have versions of this workflow, right? Because we're working in server, and now we have versions of it. So if I know, oh, but I did the same incentive, the same mechanic of this incentive 2 months ago, I will just go to the version of that version of this workflow, and I will reuse a lot of the workflow from there. So I'm just going to adjust it to my specific need now, but not really working from scratch every time. And yeah, also having the workflow repository in server, you can just share it with even without the server. You can share these workflows. We share these workflows between ourselves, and then you can take a look at how someone else probably approached the thing. So it's very useful.
Okay. There's 2 other questions. Let's try to get through those before we wrap up. But I think these questions are really valid. So one of the questions is with Tableau. Do you integrate it on Knime, or do you take the outcome and further process it in Tableau? And why don't you use the visualization from Knime? Just the same question.
Okay, yes. So I will actually start with the later. I think for some specific needs that we have right now, Tableau is I don't know, it's a better tool to disseminate information. For example, to non-analysts, it's a lot better to work with Tableau, right? It's easier for me to do a dashboard there where they can access data. It's automated. They go there. Tableau is easy to use for everyone. I mean, you don't have to be an analyst to work with Tableau. You just have to have the link, the access. You go there, you click refresh, and move some dots. And it's like, I'm sorry if I'm going to offend anyone, but it's like Apple, right? It's pretty restrictive, but it works, you know. So it's less. I mean, you don't have so much options, but it's easier for everyone to work with. And this is one reason why we use Tableau, and how we use Knime with Tableau is that we actually use it together with Snowflake. So yeah, if for example in Tableau I'm using something that doesn't require lots of data processing or huge amount of data being joined and then put in a visualization, then I'm probably going to connect with Tableau directly to Snowflake and do all the connections in there. But whenever we have like complex analysis that need to be visualized in Tableau, we do all the processing in Knime. So we develop the processing Knime, and then we just write the data to Snowflake, the process data to Snowflake. So then Tableau can just connect to that Snowflake table and just visualize be a front end for data. So this is how we use it.
Okay. I'm going to quick through two more questions. Do you have any kind of dependencies tracking? Is it possible to quickly assess sources that are used to make a report? Maybe I can help in that too a little bit, but.
Yes, I mean, if I'm, I don't know exactly I don't really understand the question, but for example, in here, I can very easily, and this is one reason. So instead of okay, so this is a simple connection to a table, right? I could be writing like a very lengthy code here, doing all this, I mean, joining all these tables together in like one single SQL code, right? So, but doing it differently, doing it like this allows me to actually control the sources that I'm using for this report. So I know that I'm using some information from this table, some information from this table, some information from this table, and then all this information is being joined here. So if I want to, I'm not operating on this huge SQL query which results. No, I'm actually operating on the bits, and there. If I change everything here, I know that it's going to be cascaded all the way to the retrieve data. So it's again.
Yeah, I think yes. The question is more related to. Sorry for jumping in, but I'm just trying to help bridge the gap here. I think the biggest question is that you're connecting to a number of different data sources, and
yes.
Let's say the workflow runs, or you plan to run the workflow, and you want to make sure that those data sources are accessible, reachable, or you want to understand what changes are. So you want to understand what the dependencies are of your workflows, and is there some way to map that? And I think from the Knime perspective, I don't think we don't yet have a sort of connection catalog, which allows you to sort of assess these are the connections that are used in the workflow. These are the databases that you're connecting to the workflow. And out of these are the connections that are actually valid, or these are the data sets that are available. What you can do, and just to add a comment here, is you could add, so there's various ways of collecting all this information, and for example, printing it out into a component which collects all the connection information in the workflow. Or the other thing we could do, obviously, is there's error catching in Knime. So you can make sure that even if a data source is missing and it's not essential for the workflow to run or a report to run, the workflow doesn't fail, but an error is handled and maybe a record is injected that there was no data found. But we have some plans around not data cataloging exactly, but to have some structure around data connections, but not in this complete dependency tracking right now with the way you're asking. Any comments to that, Lucian? I mean, your experience?
No. I mean, I would do the same thing. So I would just yeah, we have some. For example, we have some workflows which either read from APIs or post data to APIs, and I think that's where we have the most problems. And yes, what we do use in those cases is nodes exactly to catch the error and then inform us that information isn't available at that point, so that we I mean, we weren't able to write data to the API, or we weren't able to retrieve data from the API, because this data is going to then not being available is then going to be translated into data not being updated in some other report. So we have these processes not in this workflow example, because I don't have this kind of data source here, but we have pieces of workflow which will figure out whether we have an error, we weren't able to write, we weren't able to read, and then at this point we are basically getting a notification that we had that kind of an error, you know. So
okay. Thanks for that. There's one final question, and that's the question: are the email components available? I guess if you could, is it possible for you to share those components? I leave that up to you. I don't know. There's probably
yeah,
something
I will. Yes, yeah, if I would share it, of course I would take whatever we don't want to share, but depends on. So this thing is pretty easy. I don't think that this needs to be shared. This is a bit more complex, where you can you split this base, right? This is a small base, right? But we have reports like with 100,000 rows, right? And you want to send it to some 100 people, and then we would have one node like this, which would just create individual files with pieces of information and send it to each and everyone. And I can do something really general in that and probably post it to the.
We might be able to help you with that. So yeah, let us know if you want to generalize it a little bit, and then maybe we can take the component and. Okay.
Yes, sure.
Okay, Lucian, do you have anything else to add?
No.
Okay, then I want to thank you for the presentation. And I'm not going to take a lot of time right now, but I thought I'd quickly give you a kind of overview of where you could go after. So the story is, right, that I think we should show a great example of how they started off on various, let's say, legacy systems and doing everything in Excel, how they've automated those workflows to make their lives of analysts easier. And I'm going to show you two examples that are, these are all available, so we should be able to share these. The two workflows that are actually web portal applications that showcase two ways of delivering something that the end user could end up actually using from the web portal of the server. So for those of you who are familiar with the server, there's a new version of the web portal which makes things look a little bit nicer than before and also adds some nice functionality. So the story is, right, that originally an analyst started to do something on a day-to-day basis with Knime. They like that workflow, they've automated it, and they've been generating reports out of it. In this case, we're going to look at churn data, right? This is a super simple application, which, by the way, was built by one of my colleagues, Paolo, who's one of our whiz kids around creating cool visualizations. Check out his workflows on the hub, because they're really good, and he's done some very nice visualizations. And the point is that so the analyst originally had run these reports to generate a list of customers that are likely to churn. Maybe they've done it on an ad hoc basis. and then it became an automated process. You created a workflow every I don't know, week. There was a list of customers that were likely to churn. And now we're in a situation where this churn prediction is an interactive application, because the SMEs are subject matter experts, right? The people who actually need to make decision what actions need to be taken on those potentially churning customers went back with so many questions every time they got these reports that it was decided that it's better to create an application. So this application is really very simple. We're simulating here, just to give you the background, and right, there was a question about what components are. So I'm going to switch back and forth between the web portal, which is the web interface, just to show you how simple these actually are. So on the back end, I've got Knime Analytics platform open here. There's three components that actually make up this workflow. One of them is, each component is a web page. As soon as you wrap something into a component, and if it's got visualizable components, so JavaScript elements or so-called widgets, they will appear on a web page within Knime. And these provide you interactive options so that the end user can actually interact with it. So inside here, this is again a really simple application. There's a couple of standard elements you will see on all of these components. They are the ones that help define the layout. You can copy these. These examples are available, so you can customize them to your content colors or layouts and so on and so forth. And basically, this simulates a connection to a database where we select a specific table, read that database, and do duplicate filtering and add a row ID. This is the first component. The second component is very simple. This is select the customers to contact, right? Story is I'm a business analyst. I look at the number of people likely to churn. Maybe I'm in customer success, and I need to decide who to contact, who to get in touch with, who to take action with, because I want to avoid them churning. So this would be simple visualization. As you can see, there's a visualization components here. There's a scatter plot. There's a couple of interactive widgets. Widgets are the ones that appear as web portal applications. And there's a couple of filter action points that you will see. And I will show you what this looks like, but it's not a complex application at all. And in the end, there's again a final component where we use a tile view to display each of those customers so that the person can actually spend some more time analyzing them. And then we create a temporary directory to create an Excel file and actually download that file so that we can then, for example, feed it into our CRM, feed it into our customer success tool, or simply create a list of people that we distribute amongst. Terribly sorry. So I'm sharing the wrong thing. And thank you for pointing that. Sorry, I have to go back really quickly. Sorry, I'd say thank you for pointing that out. So what I was mentioning is there's three components, right? There's the first one, which I wanted to show, which is the connection part, pulling in the data. The second component, which I will go into, and you can open these by control double click, where we do the visualization and some of the interactive filtering. And then there's a third component, so essentially a third web page, where we generate the temporary file, the temporary Excel file that we can download and then, as I mentioned, take action upon. And what this looks like in the web portal is really quite simple. We're simulating the login here, but imagine we're logging into the Snowflake database that Christian Solution has built for his analysts. We log in, we get access to the data. We're retrieving those customers that are part of the data pool. And actually, I actually modified this score. It's called this adjuster here. It's got a specific name, but I'm just slipping mine. But this scroll bar here, because I want to define a certain threshold below which I'm not going to invest energy in, because my expectation is that those customers won't churn. And obviously, there's unfortunately, right, a set of customers that are likely to churn no matter what you do. They're just dissatisfied, is not happy with your product, and you sometimes have to make conscious decisions where to invest your resources in. And that sounds harsh, but I mean, it's the true reality of the situation. But anyways, an analyst, what I've done here is I've selected a subset, and I can choose the different products that I want to apply. I'm always sub-selecting a different subset. And as you can see, we've got customer IDs here, which are very nicely in the GDPR way, pretty much anonymized so that we don't have too much information about them here. Obviously, this is all fake data, but bear in mind that there could be a situation. And as a next step, what I can do is go to the next page on the web portal where we have these nice tile views. I can scroll over. Obviously, I could have more information about each of these customers. And as I mentioned, that stare and compare part, I can start looking and sort of deep diving into who are these potential churn customers are. And most importantly, go back, right? Because I've done some analysis, I've done some filtering, and I realized that, whoa, I need to filter for a smaller set of customers. Maybe there's too many, or there's something that I've noticed in the pattern. And obviously, we could think of any sort of machine learning application here to augment this with some sort of prediction and so on. But bear with me that we're doing a simple solution here. Anyway. As a final step, I've narrowed the range of users that I actually want to, customers that I want to inspect. I'm going to click next. And then as a final step, I simply download, because I'm happy with the selection, simply download that data set and in Excel, and I'm able to then further process it. So that's a very simple example. And I see this question, but I want to show you one other example, which I tend to I demo Knime fairly often, so I want to show something that I show quite a lot. And I'll do this in 4 minutes flat, so bear with me if it's a little bit fast. This is a segmentation use case. Again, the kind of user story here is that I'm a subject matter expert. Let's say I'm in marketing, operating in a telco segment, and I want to cluster my customers because I want to create various marketing campaigns for the different clusters. In an ideal world, right, there'd be more descriptors here, and I'd work together with my subject matter expert, my Knime expert, to create this application so that his data science or analysis expertise goes into the application, and I don't have to run back to him every single time I want to change the number of clusters I want to create or change the columns that I want to use. It's not true AutoML because we're not going in direction, right? We want interactivity. We don't want black boxes. We want people to be able to interact and make decisions based on insights that they've gathered from a stepwise analysis. So here, step one, I would, before making any settings, create 10 clusters, which is going to result in something horrendous. And please bear with me. We're not going to analyze this from a very scientific point of view. So I'm going to set settings, again, iteratively going back, changing the settings to create 3 clusters and removing those values that I don't create very nice clusters. So I'm going to create some sample, which is slightly biased, of course, because I run this demo before. But I'm going to try another iteration, and obviously I could go through a number of different iterations, not relying necessarily on my data science experience, but relying, or my analysis experience, but relying on my subject matter expertise, which as an analyst is my biggest added value. And obviously want that subject matter expertise, that gut feeling, to be underlined by data, but it's always amazing how the human eye and the mind can identify patterns. But for the sake of this exploration, we're going to say we're happy with this result, right? So I see 3 scatter plots, which we've set up together with my colleague and my Knime expert, so I know what I'm looking at. I know what the PCA clusters represent, and I'm going to say I'm happy with these clusters. And what I can do in terms of interactive application to be able to actually use this downstream is I'm going to be able to label each of these clusters. So when I export the results at the end, I get a list of each of the cluster members with a cluster identifier next to it. So I can, for example, feed it into my marketing automation system, or again, feed it back to the CRM. Some things might be integrated, but you might want to create applications for specific campaigns, or you might just have a lot of disparate data sources for which you would build something like this. So we're going to label this target group A, which again is not very descriptive, but for our parts and purposes it's fine. And we're going to label it target group B. And there's a loop in the background. I won't go into the detail because we're running out of time, but this example is actually available on the hub, just like the other one is. So you can explore what actually happens within the workflows. You can see, we can review the results. The final is a summary of my analysis, so I can see all the 3 groups see the clusters, the statistics, and revisualization, just to sort of summarize the analysis, so to speak, that I've done. And I mean, in this case, the workflow ends here, but as you've seen in Lucia's example, right, when reports are generated, we could have a report generated here, and you could be able to download the file just like in the previous example. So all of these are possibilities for interaction. You can even push a button and push it straight into your CRM or your database and so on and so forth. With that said, I'd like to finish up now. There's a question here about, is it possible to implement a picture, for example, country, and edit a network on it? Well, we do support, so we would be able to use, there are some geospatial plugins or extensions that we have, so you would be able to, not necessarily a country, but you would be able to use a map and display records on it. There is, so if you go to the hub.knime.com, you should be able to find examples. If you type in web portal, you should be able to find a long list of examples, and I believe we did do an example, maybe there's a blog post about it, I need to double check, where we did some visualizations using a map of the world, and we displayed data based on that map. But Lucian actually wants to add an answer, or did you just mark that because I've answered that? Do you have anything that is additional to add? Have you done anything in that direction, Lucian?
No, I was just marking it for you.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so there's a lot of examples. So I would suggest have a look through. If you're interested, we're more than happy to show you more examples. There's a lot of examples here on the Hub and web portal. You can see who the contributors are. There's a lot of things that we contribute ourselves from Knime, but there's a lot of things that you would be able to find from the rest of the community. You can try these usually on the local instance simply by right-clicking on these visualizations. You can actually see what the visualizations are. If you right-click and you execute an open views, it will show you the JavaScript views that are used in it within your desktop environment to see what it would look like. But obviously, if you're interested in a server trial, there's a couple of ways to do that. There's a free one on AWS if you will have a quick look at what Knime is capable of. But there's a bunch of us who are more than happy to help there. Anyway, I don't want to make this a marketing pitch, so I'm very happy for everybody attending. And a final note, just want to hand over to Karina as a sort of wrap up for the webinar. So thank you very much, and over to you, Karina.
Thank you, Metzi. Guys, thank you so much for being with us and in such huge numbers and with the bomb that we had. It's very complicated to have a very detailed conversation with such a large group. But again, if you're interested in having this type of conversation, do join our community because we plan to have them anyway. So the more the merrier. Thank you so much, Metzi and Knime team for helping us to put this together. Thank you, Lucian, for the presentation. If there are any unanswered questions or there are some details that we promised, we will be coming up with a follow-up email to you. So you will have all the resources there to catch on, and I think including this meeting recording. So if there aren't any last questions, hope you find it useful. Give us a feedback, a shout out in the chat for saying goodbye, and hope to see you in different formats and different contexts as well. Have a great evening or day.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.